So, with the mushrooming of the smaller parties and now independent candidates, where does this now wide choice leave voters and the bigger, more established parties? Let's speak to the political analyst, Professor Bheki Mngomezulu. Professor Mngomezulu, good afternoon to you. Is this the year of the small party, or are the big five still going to dominate?
Thank you very much, Stephen, for having me, and good evening to your viewers. Yes, indeed, smaller parties are a force to be reckoned with, more especially given the fact that we have too many political parties that are set to participate in this year's election. So it means that in the event that there is no outright winner, these smaller parties might in fact be the kingmakers in one way or the other. In other words, if for example, a party is shy of the 50+1 threshold and it needs a seat or two for it to run a government, be it at the provincial level or at a national level, these smaller parties then will come handy. Although, of course, they will come with their own demands, saying that we are prepared to give you these seats on condition that we get A, B, C, and D. So yes, indeed, they are forced to be reckoned with.
Now, lots of them have been formed by people who are either disgruntled or who have been kicked out of their political homes. But does that alone account for the exponential increase in these parties?
You know, Putvuyo, the point you're making is an important one because we have a source of reference, more especially if we look at what happened with COPE, for example, in 2009, getting 30 seats and then suddenly being reduced to only 3 seats. Only God knows how many seats they will get this time around. So it's true that when parties are formed, either because there is excitement or because there is anger, both of those are short-lived. But they do cause an upset, at least in the short term. Like in this year's election, if, for example, you have a political party that has been formed either because of disgruntlement or because of excitement, chances are they are going to cause a dent on the older political parties. Then come the next local government election, and then subsequently the next general election, they might have faded away, but they would have done what they were set up to do, which is to cause an upset to the parties that kicked them out or parties that they were not happy with. So yes, in the short term, they will definitely cause an upset.
Professor, one of the interesting things is everyone's predicting a big decline in the ANC's share of the vote, say from 57% in 2019 to, let's call it 45% now. But if you look at the numbers, all of those votes aren't going to the DA or the EFF, and they can't even be going to even the smaller parties. Even MK doesn't account for it. Does that mean then that a lot of people just aren't voting at all, and that maybe smaller parties, when you've got a bigger choice, it's more difficult and maybe harder to decide how to vote?
You know, Stephen, truth be told, there are a number of people who still believe in the ANC, not necessarily because they think it is the best party, but because they say the devil you know is better than the one you don't know. Because the ANC is a liberation movement, there are people who have associated themselves with the ANC primarily for that reason, that these are the people who liberated us. And historically and factually, that is correct. But then the next question will be, after having obtained the political independence, have they delivered on their mandate? So then some of those who are saying, let us rather not vote for the party, but we're not voting for any other political party, which is exactly what happened during the 2021 local government election. The voter turnout was the lowest since 1994, and the majority of those people, like you correctly pointed out, Stephen, those votes did not go to opposition political parties. People just decided not to vote because some were giving the ANC the benefit of the doubt, saying that maybe they will regroup and do things differently. Whether that has happened, only time will tell. Come 29 May, we'll see if indeed those who decided not to vote in 2021 will this time around think that the ANC has regrouped and then go back and vote for the party. Or if they will say, we've had enough, we're going to other political parties to try our luck there. So those are some of the critical questions we'll be monitoring with a keen interest.
But is there something, Prof, that your newer parties have brought with them, your ATMs, your Al-Jamas, that, for example, older parties, your PACs, your UDMs, have lost or never had?
You know, what normally happens is that when a new political party is formed, it's surrounded, was characterized by euphoria and ecstasy. You will find a lot of people associating themselves with that political party. Some of them, not necessarily because they believe in its ideology, but because they're just excited to join a political party. And then others are hoping for positions. Once the parliamentary list is concluded, some decide to go back home, as it were, and others decide to form their own political parties, and then others, of course, just stay away. So these smaller political parties, like the one, including the ones we've just mentioned, they are there for a reason. Some of them are appealing to a smaller constituency. Some of them, truth be told, they are just attracting a particular racial group. Some are not hiding even the fact that they are appealing to the colored vote, for example. And then it means that that is their constituency. And then if that colored vote is contested by a number of other political parties and they don't win, some will fade away, others will join other political parties, and then, of course, anything can happen immediately after that. So these parties are being formed for different reasons. Some of them are short-term, and then others will stay a bit longer until the next national election, and then we'll see if they will have regrouped by then or if they will have further been weakened by the bigger parties. But bigger parties, there is this scene of incumbency. If you have been in office, people are able to see your mistakes, and then they are pointing those mistakes. But if you're a newcomer, they give you the benefit of the doubt and say, let's give this one a chance and see if indeed he's going to deliver on his or her mandate. So those are some of the differences we can identify between older parties and new political parties.
If you look over the long term, so let's say 2029, maybe to 2034, and you end up with more and more smaller parties and no real big parties dominating, and you end up with groups of people that form coalitions when they have no ideological position, no shared direction. And doesn't that mean that the only reason they work together is to stay in power? And doesn't that mean that the possibility is that no one ever really works in one direction, left or right or wherever, to try and fix our problems? And is that something we need to be aware of as South Africans?
Unfortunately, Stephen, that's the reality we are faced with. If you look at the manifestos of these political parties and ask yourself what distinguishes Manifesto A from Manifesto B, the main difference will be the numbers. They're just playing a numbers game. Others would say, I'm going to build 2.5 million houses. The other one will say, I'm going to build 4 million houses. But there is nothing of substance that distinguishes these political parties. Even on the issue of load shedding, some will say, we are going to end load shedding within 6 months, others within a year. But when it comes to the practical side of things, how are you going to do that? There is very likely that people have put forth. The same with the unemployment, inequality, and so on and so forth. So these political parties are not necessarily brought together by ideology. Because when you look at these 52 political parties and you ask yourself, what ideology is Party A pushing forth? What ideology is Party number 50 putting forth? You will find that in the main, there is very little, if anything at all, that distinguishes those parties. So which means that it comes back to the point we are making that it's just political coalition of convenience. They are coming together simply because some of them want to render the ANC basically irrelevant. The question then is, once the ANC disappears from the picture, what are you left with to knit two together? Some would be saying, want to deal with the DA and move it from the number 2 spot. Once that goal is achieved, what else are you going to do? So those are some of the critical questions most of these parties ask. They just think about the here and now. We want to achieve this primary goal. After that, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And that is a recipe for disaster. Lastly, then, which talks to the coalitions. These coalitions, for me, are a recipe for disaster. We've seen this happening in many municipalities, primarily because there are no ideological differences, if there are any ideologies to start with. And then it means that when these parties come together, they come together only for political expediency, not necessarily to deliver services as they would make you and I believe that is the goal they want to achieve. Hence, then you find that these coalitions don't work. And also because they're not carefully thought through. You just bring Party A and Party B together to form a government, and there is nothing that holds you firm together. And then once you are in government, you realize that you are singing from different hymn books, And then, of course, the end result is that you can either end that coalition or you continue the coalition, but it doesn't achieve the aim it set out to achieve in the first place.
Prof, that's why we're going to leave it for today. Thank you very much for your time and insights. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you to your viewers.